use headphones for best experience. Thanks for your fantastic support. Hi, welcome to another video. First, let me show you that you can find also a lot of my content audio only on music streaming platforms like Spotify or Apple Music or other platforms. If you type in ASMRctica, ASMR, you will find a lot of albums here with the content audio only. Today I would like to do another drawing video, and I will draw a dinosaur. I made a dinosaur drawing video last year. It was the Allosaurus, a theropod dinosaur. So this time I was thinking about trying to draw a Triceratops. It's a herbivore, and it's from the other main group of dinosaurs. The theropods is a Sauriscia, and Triceratops is an Ornithischian dinosaur. The Ornithischians are herbivores. Theropods are carnivores. So I will start by trying to draw just a overall shape of it to start with. Okay, I think it's time to zoom in a bit. And I can start to focus on the head. This is a very characteristic part for Triceratops and other Ceratopsians that are in the same family or group as Triceratops. Triceratops is a very evolved genus of Ceratopsians. It lived during the late Cretaceous, at the very end of dinosaur era. Also the horns, brow horns, are very characteristic. For the Ceratopsidae. Has a sister group or like related group called the Centrosaurus, I think. Centrosaurini. It's a group with, instead of brow horns like Triceratops, it had focused on a really long nasal horn. And Triceratops instead had a shorter nasal horn, but longer brow horn. Can't really decide which pencil to use here. This is a bit softer and this is a bit harder. So the bony frill at the back of the skull that evolved in the Ceratopsians from just a small ridge at the back of the head into these very long shields or frills. And on Triceratops also it evolved these spines on along the border of the frill, called the epoccipitals. Probably just for ornamental reasons. But in the Centrosauridae, or Saurini, the other group, these evolved into really long horns, actually. Also ornamental, some hooks, or yeah, they look quite crazy. They were smaller, the Centrosaurini, but they instead had really big ornaments here. Long horns along the border here, and also this very long nasal horn. They also had this cheekbone horn that evolved quite early. I think after I'm finished with this drawing, I will draw some quick phylogenetic tree, show you how it evolved from other earlier, more primitive forms. Also characteristic is the beak, of course. It looks like a parrot's beak. And in some genera, I think they have found that it was covered in hide, skin actually. But I'm not sure if it was. Could have been like that also with Triceratops, maybe. A very large animal. I think just the horns could be up to 2 meters long, or at least 1 meter, more than 1 meter. The entire head of a Triceratops, or maybe some other genera of the same group, is actually the largest head of any animal found on Earth ever. So the head compared to the rest of the body was really, really big. And very important for this animal. Also all these ornaments and features are, a lot of them, that is special for Triceratops has to do with the head, of course. Since it was an herbivore and it lived at the same time as Tyrannosaurus rex, it of course had to defend itself a lot. So it grew bigger as Tyrannosaurus grew bigger, evolved, during the millions of years it lived. And also all these features that made it easier for it to, or possible to defend itself, or maybe just looking scary, also evolved. It grew bigger, and the head, on the frill, the horns also grew bigger. The head was probably used a lot for display, scary, to scare others. Also combat with the horns. This is very protecting for the neck, actually, for a bite of Tyrannosaurus. So very special for Triceratops is the beak. It's actually an additional bone that the Ceratopsians had, called the rostral bone, in front of the premaxilla. So maxilla is here, premaxilla is here, and then this extra rostral bone at the front. And in the lower, the mandible, also it's this very developed predentary bone that evolved into a very pointy, sharp shape like that. So it really had a super sharp and powerful beak. And it lost its front teeth eventually. I mean, not Triceratops, but the ancestors and the primitive forms of Ceratopsians used to have at least 2 or 3 front teeth, like the ornithopods. But they lost them and could rely only on this powerful beak, maybe also to get room for muscles and make this beak even more powerful. And the teeth were restricted to the back of the jaw, like this, here somewhere. They had the teeth that were very suitable and developed for chewing vegetables and maybe very chewy vegetation and plants, I mean, not really vegetables. But they ate probably shoots and leaves, roots, ferns, and they had to chew a lot, and the head, the entire head actually is very well adapted and evolved for strong chewing and muscles for the jaws. Actually, the frill that started just like a small ridge like this on the head probably happened to be there because it would attach stronger jaw muscles. And because still in the evolved versions in Triceratops there were like holes in the middle, the base here of the frill. I think some kind of holes where muscles could attach them. And also it lost the mobility in the lower jaw, because earlier forms had like a small joint between the dentary and predentary called it was called the Predentary-Dentary joint. But they lost this mobility and it became almost like a fused bone. I guess so it could be more stable and just use this beak for chopping, and it actually like cropped the plants with the beak and then processed it and chewed it. Probably also it had these cheeks helping it to maintain the food while processing it with the teeth. And the teeth were triangular and they were not grinding the food, they were more like slicing it. And one special feature for Triceratops that evolved late was that they could move the jaws in both up and down motion and also backwards and forwards. So it could really, in that way, it could chew the plants. And not only upwards and downwards like the earlier versions could. So that was also an adaptation. was trying to draw these what's it called? Osteoderms, I think. Some small bones on the skin, actually in the skin, some bumps like this, but it looks a bit strange. Like it's just covered with dots. The entire body was covered with a thick, it had a really thick skin, protecting it, of course, from predators, and also they had these polygonal scales. I'm not sure exactly how to draw them. Yeah, but I had started to focus a bit here on the front legs. So sometimes they are depicted with like elephant type of feet, but that's probably not how they looked. They had the spreading out the fingers like this, both on the hind legs and front legs, and they were probably positioned a bit inwards. So the gait was not sprawling like a lizard, but also not really upright. The very first theory was that they were sprawling, or that they thought when they started to discover these dinosaurs, they thought that they were sprawling because lizards were sprawling and crocodiles were sprawling, so why not dinosaurs sprawling? But then they realized that they could run, many dinosaurs could run so fast, so it would be impossible with the sprawling posture. So then they realized also with bone structure and everything, and track evidence, that they must have had an upright position. When it comes to Triceratops, later they have realized that maybe it was some kind of mixture in this case. So it was not totally upright, so a bit sprawling, and then the hands, when the hands met the ground, they were like the fingers were pointing a bit inwards, and the second digit, if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it had 5 digits on the front hand, was pointing forwards like that, and then a bit inwards, and it had 5 fingers. One of them was not touching the ground, so only 4 touching the ground, and only 3 weight bearing, and those weight bearing ones had hooves. The claws had turned into some kind of hooves. And on the back, the feet had only 4 toes. The 5th toe was totally So it was almost non-existing. This happened a lot among different dinosaurs. Theropods got only 3 toes, maybe only 2 that was like very distinctive. Triceratops' feet and hands were quite different from each other. And the reason for that was also that they evolved into becoming a quadrupedal animal for the second time. So it was its ancestors, the tetrapods, the fish with legs that all land-living animals descend from, were quadrupedal, and then all the dinosaurs, ancestor of dinosaurs, the archosaurs, they were all bipedal, so they could move really fast and run. But then the dinosaurs, many of the dinosaurs evolved into bigger animals, and those biggest ones had to evolve into quadrupedal animals again, not Tyrannosaurus and not the biggest theropods, of course. They still also had to be very fast when they were hunting. Of course, they could evolve some kind of galloping motion. I think there are theories that Triceratops could gallop, like a rhino. But maybe not as fast as a rhino, but quite fast. Maybe faster than an elephant, but not as fast as a horse and a rhino. So, yeah, that's why maybe they're so different, the feet and the hands, because here it was only 4 fingers. Or toes. Sometimes it's better with less detail, actually, to make the entire picture look more clean and clear on the most important features. It has been proposed that Triceratops had some bristles, maybe here at the back of the trunk and on the base of the tail, because there's an ancestor of Ceratopsians that's not really an ancestor of Triceratops, but it's like it comes from the same ancestor, quite close to Triceratops, but it has its own lineage. It's called Psittacosaurus, and it means parrot, lizard. Psittaco is parrot. And on that one they had actually found bristles, so that's why it was suggested that maybe Triceratops also had bristles or quills. But I mentioned these small osteoderms that covered the entire body, and I think they could not have both these osteoderms on the polygon scales and the bristles. Because, yeah, somehow, I'm not sure how it works, but somehow it's most possible that it had only these osteoderms, like really small bumps covering the entire body. The head was connected to the spine in a 45-degree inclination, made it easy for it to grazing on the ground, and also to have the horns, these really long horns, pointing forwards if it had to like attack someone really quickly. And I've also heard that the joint between the head and the spine had developed into a really maneuverable joint, a ball and socket joint, the type of joint that humans have in their shoulders. So that's really interesting. I wonder how many degrees it could turn its head, because yeah, it would be very flexible with that type of joint. Also, the first three cervical vertebrae, the axis and atlas and the third, had fused into one bone. So it lost some flexibility in the neck in that way, but maybe it was compensated by that ball and socket joint. But that was necessary for, I don't know exactly, to support, of course, the really large head as the animal evolved into a bigger animal. It's also been suggested that it had more than one gut, so just like cows. This is really interesting. The bone here that is called the hip bone, actually the hip bone is the one that differs from Ornithischians, and Saurians have one kind of hip bone, and Ornithischians have the other type of hip bone. And the most primitive one is the Saurischian version. So some time in the past, maybe during the Triassic, the Ornithischians evolved from the Archosaur. And what happened, what defines an Ornithischian, is that the front part of the hip bone, the pubis, it evolved and started to point backwards, parallel to the ischium, probably so it could make room for digestion. Yeah, and maybe like second gut or foregut. Maybe it had foreguts like cows. So it really needed space here in this region for processing all the food, since it was an herbivore. The thing with Triceratops is that it started to secondarily evolve forward-pointing pubis bone. So it's a bit strange. That's the case in many examples with Triceratops. It like evolves back to something that it had been earlier in the evolution process. So the hip bone looks more like a Saurischian hip bone actually, with also a forward-pointing pre-pubis. So it's part of the pubis bone. So the pubis bone is both backwards and also had this protruding part like this. So I don't know why. Probably, my guess is that it needed, again, since it grew so big, it needed more muscle attachment area. So a Triceratops could be 7 to 9 meters long and weigh like 5 to 7 tons. And the tail, usually so powerful for many types of dinosaurs, and kind of lost its function since it became like the balance changed so much when it had this really heavy head and became quadrupedal. So it didn't use its tail for balancing the body anymore. It used the 4 limbs. I think I can zoom out again so you can see the entire animal. So this is my version of a Triceratops. I think I'm done with the drawing now. I will put a link to the reference picture. I found a reference picture of a really nice Triceratops created by Muhammad Haqqani. So I will draw some kind of phylogenetic tree for Triceratops. We start with the Ornithischians. Like Dinosauria is here, and it evolved into Saurians and Ornithischians. That was the hip bone. That went from this to this. And the funny thing is that Ornithischian means bird hip. But birds didn't evolve from Ornithischians, they actually evolved from Saurians, theropods. So it was parallel evolution there. The birds also had to have the pubis bone pointed backwards. So this is Ornithischians. Almost all Ornithischians are also in the group Genasaura. Gena meaning cheek. So they had probably cheeks since they were herbivores. So they had to keep the food in the mouth while chewing it. So they developed cheeks probably. Next stage I will draw here is the Ceratopod. And it's just a name for two other main groups. The group that became the Ceratopsians, that's why it's called Cera, and also the group, it contains the group that developed into ornithopods. From ornithopods you have Poda. So the ornithopods were the hadrosaurs, iguanodons, those, and also Parasaurolophus. And they didn't have the features that the Marginocephalians had. The Marginocephalians, they had this very characteristic frame at the top of the skull. So from here, the Pachycephalosauria branched off. They developed a totally different type of frill, but it's still like seen on the back of their skull. And then they also developed this characteristic dome on the head, on the top of the head. And then there's the Ceratopsia. And it's a bit tricky because there are so many groups that are called almost the same. Ceratopsia, Ceratopsoidea, Ceratopsidia. They sound so similar. But I think Ceratopsia is the earliest and most inclusive group. They evolved quite early, and one special feature here is the rostral bone. So you have the Psittacosaurus branching off here. The beak comes here. And then the Neoceratopsia. What was new for them? this ridge at the back of the head. With the original purpose being for muscle attachments for the cheeks. It started to have like a square looking face, triangular or square. And from here we have a branch leading to Archaeoceratops, ancient form. These ceratops lived in Asia, Eastern Asia. Mongolia, they have been found, China, Southeast Asia, Uzbekistan, yeah, a lot of them in Gobi Desert. So they started to evolve there, and then later some of them migrated over the land bridge over Bering Strait to what's now North America. Yeah, I thought like that. 1, 2, 3. And this group I only call 4 because I haven't found a name for it. But it's easy to remember because here they had grew so big that they became quadrupedal. So, which one was this? Archaeoceratops and Psittacosauria. They were still bipedal. Here was an ancient form called Leptoceratops. And that one was actually found in North America. So now they had also migrated, grew larger and started to live in North America. In the late Cretaceous. Here was early Cretaceous and Jurassic. And by this time, North America was divided into several islands actually, and the Ceratopsians in North America, they lived only in the western island, and the fossils have been found in Montana, Wyoming, for example. So, like in the border between the Rocky Mountains and the Great Plains, because the Great Plains was actually a sea by this time. The western interior seaway. And the continent to the west of that sea, that's today's Western Canada, Western US and Mexico, was called Laridia, and that's where the Ceratopsians lived. The fifth group is the Coronosauria. And a new feature for them was the enlarged frill. Still no horns, though. Also enlarged skull, because I guess the skull also grew bigger here as they became quadrupedal. From here is a branch to Protoceratops. That were found a lot in China and Mongolia. Mongolia. So they're both in Asia and North America here. Or they migrated sometime here. And the sixth group is Ceratopsians. That includes the Ceratopsidae, and also a genus called Zuniceratops. And that was the first Ceratopsia that had horns, that had brow horns. It was found in North America. It was quite large, 3.5 meters or 11.5 feet. And it lived during the late Cretaceous, but not until the end of the late Cretaceous, but still in the late Cretaceous. And finally, the seventh group, the Ceratopsidae. Actually, it's two groups here also. The Centrosaurini and Chasmosaurini. Chasmosaurini is sometimes called also Ceratopsini. So we have Ceratopsini, Ceratopsidae, Ceratopsioidea, and Ceratopsia, and Ceratopoda. And there's a difference, of course, between these groups. Triceratops has a large frill, but it's not at all one of the largest frills. Those with the largest frills are the... Now let's see. It's not Centrosaurini, so it must be the Chasmosaurini. Yeah, the Chasmosaurini had really large frills, and they started to have fenestra, holes in them, so they could be even larger frills, not weighing too much. And Triceratops is actually part of this group with really large frills. But the thing is that the size of the frill of Triceratops is not so large compared to the others in that group. But it's solid, it has no holes in it. It's really compact. The centrosaurs, they had smaller frills, but instead a lot of ornaments on them, and also they had the nasal horn, focused on the nasal horn and not the brow horns. And Triceratops genus has two species. It's Triceratops horridus and Triceratops prorsus. The first one was discovered in late 1880s, I think, during the Bone Wars in Wyoming. So yeah, that's the phylogenetic tree. Or maybe I can mention the special features for that last group, Ceratopsidae. Then they started to have this fusion of the three most upper cervical vertebrae, and also they started to have double-rooted teeth, so really strong teeth, even though they had the teeth also replaced, so they have like a tooth battery. And And yeah, also they lost a bone in the face called the epoccipital bone. They lost it maybe for more room for strong cheek or strong jaw muscles. And they started with this move when they were chewing, they started to have this forward, backwards, as well as upwards, downwards movement. And yeah, it's really, really effective processing the plants that they were eating. And here with the beak, they could really like crop the plant and then chew it. The plants weren't so easy to chew by this time, I guess, because the flowering plants actually evolved quite late, but they did evolve during late Cretaceous. But I guess the plants were much more chewy and difficult to process. So jaw muscles, cheeks, beaks, specialized teeth, everything was needed for being a herbivore by this time. So I think that was it for Triceratops and for this time. Thank you so much for watching and sleep well. Take care. See you soon.